Hi guys. So for this video, we are going to do the imperfect competition, and you have under the imperfect competition, we have three types of markets. We have a monopoly, oligopoly, and the monopolistic competition, right? So we're just going to be focusing on the monopoly, oligopoly, and the monopolistic competition. So monopoly markets. Firstly, let me introduce the imperfect competition. So an imperfect competition is basically a situation in which at least one of the conditions for the perfect competition is not satisfied, right? Remember the characteristics of the perfect competition. We say ukuthi there are many buyers and sellers. For the perfect competition, there are many buyers and sellers. And then we say ukuthi the product is homogeneous, there's no collision, and so on. So when the condition of the perfect competition are not met, then that firm becomes what? The imperfect competition. And then we have three types of imperfect competition. We have your monopoly. Okay, so they're here. Under the we have your monopoly, we have your and imperfect competition. So which is your oligopoly and your monopolistic competition, right? The two broad categories of imperfect competition are oligopoly and monopolistic competition, as well as monopolies, yeah. Okay. So basically, you guys, you understand Uti, the imperfect competition, we have three under the imperfect competition, we have three types of markets: the monopoly, the monopolistic competition, and the oligopoly, right? The perfect competition is a separate market also, which has its own characteristics, right? And behave in its own way. And we remember we said Uti, for the perfect competition, we had this thing where we said Uti, we have an industry, the market forces in the industry, they come together where the price is formed and the quantity is formed. Then the individual firm will come in and enter this industry, right? He will take the price as it is from the industry and use it in its firm to sell this particular product, right? Where we have this being equal to price, being equal to average revenue, being equal to marginal revenue, being equal to demand, right? So I'm just going to end here. And then we had our marginal cost like this. And then marginal cost is where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, because we know ukuthi here it is also equal to marginal revenue, MR. So when marginal cost equals to marginal revenue, we said ukuthi this is the profit maximization point. And then from the profit maximization point, we go down to find our quantity. So this good, we are selling it at this quantity at Q1. Right. And then now to determine whether we're making a profit or a loss, we have to look at what? At AC, which is your average cost, and what? And your AR. These will tell you whether you're making a profit or you're making a loss, right? So if your AC is above AR, so AR is this one in a perfect market, right? In this one, perfect competition. So your AR is this one. So if your AC is here, then you go up. It means your costs are here. Your costs are here. They are greater than the price. The price is here, which is equal to average revenue. So they are greater than your revenue. So you're making a loss. I'm sorry, here you're making a loss. But if your AC is here, you can see that, okay, this is untidy. But I hope you guys can see. If your AC is here, you can see now that your costs are where? Your costs are here, right? Your costs are here and your price is here. So you're making a profit because your average revenue is here and your cost is actually is actually here, right? And also now if your AC is here, where average revenue is equal to your average cost, which is your AC, then you're making an economic profit. So the perfect competition, it has a horizontal demand curve, while the imperfect competition, the firms under the imperfect competition, they have a downward sloping demand curve, right? Their demand curve is downward sloping. And then, yeah. So a monopoly now, we're looking at the structure of a monopoly. Remember, we said that the market structure, we're basically looking at the characteristics of that firm. When we speak of the of the structure of the firm, we speak of the characteristic. What is different with that firm compared to the other firms? So for monopoly, the number of buyers and sellers, there's only one seller and there are many buyers, right? For monopoly, we use the example of Eskom to say that Eskom is the only firm supplying electricity. So then now Eskom falls under the monopoly because there's only one seller. But how many buyers? There are many buyers. Everyone is using the electricity and there's just one Eskom, right? And then the nature of the product, it is unique and has no close substitution, right? You cannot substitute electricity. And then the barriers to entry is completely blocked. So it's very difficult to enter into this industry, right? Because of high startup costs which are required. So if you were to start your electricity company or something like that, it would require you to have a high startup cost, which is basically your capital, right? And there are also patents and licenses which block entry into this market. So your patent, it's basically now the legal rights which a firm, it's a legal rights which a firm gets, which allows them to be the only producers of that particular product, right? And the license, you guys know what a license is. If you want to start a particular company or business, you need to get a license, right? And then collusion. For monopoly, it is not possible to collude, obviously, because there's a single firm, right? We said Ukuti, the number of buyers is just one seller. So it's very difficult. Sorry, the number of buyers and sellers is just one seller and many buyers. So it is very difficult for for this firm to collude. Obviously, it doesn't make sense, right? I remember someone in class answered and said, Ukuti, it is impossible, something like that. Because there's just one single firm. And then the information is complete, obviously. For Eskom, you know, Uti, how much for how many units, and then you also know how Eskom is made, or the material, the material that they use in producing or making Eskom, which is coal and something something. So you have the information about this product, which is being sold under the monopoly. And then firms control over the price of the product. So the firms are price makers. They make their own price, right? They make their own price using what? The market forces of demand and supply. And then demand curve for the firm's product. So the demand curve, I did say it is downward sloping. But for the monopoly, it is relatively inelastic as well. The long run economic profit. So in the long run, they can make economic profit, normal profit, or an economic loss. Obviously, because it's just one firm, so it can make a profit, a normal profit, or just a loss. Okay, there's a slide I didn't include here. Okay, it's this one. Okay, the barriers to entry. Remember we said in the monopoly, there are barriers to entry because entry is completely blocked. So it is very difficult to enter because of high startup cost and also because of our patent and license. So here they're saying that we have what we call a natural monopoly, right? And economies of scale. So a natural monopoly, it's basically where now a firm can serve the entire market effectively, right? Where a firm can serve the entire market efficiently or effectively. And then this is because when this firm is actually producing this product, this is because of economies of scale, right? Because you know, with the economies of scale, it's like this. Your average costs are actually what are decreasing when your output is increasing. So this firm is able to what to increase their production while also reducing what their cost. And then so if that firm is able to do that under the monopoly market, then it becomes what a natural monopoly. So they're able to So they're able to do what? To serve the whole market effectively through what? Through producing the um by increasing their outputs and reducing their cost. Also, they can limit the size of the market. So how can they limit the size of their markets? They can limit the size of the market by obviously value the monopoly, the size is small because there is just one firm. Exclusive ownership of raw material, patents and licenses. Patents and licenses, we said Uguti patents, those are that is a legal right given to a firm to say Uguti can be the only person to produce this particular product, and then you can also prevent others from producing it. And then a license, Guti, a license is basically it is given to you to actually allow you to sell that particular product. And then it is also used to control entry and exits into the market. Sole rights and then import restrictions such as tariff and quotas. They can also restrict the entry into the market through import restrictions, where now the monopoly firm can communicate with the government, right? And okay, so Guti, you said Guti, the monopoly is the only firm in the market, right? Serving the entire market, right? Industry, I mean. So if we say, okay, this firm is charging higher prices because obviously it's the only firm. So they're going to take advantage of the fact that they're the only firm and they are going to charge higher prices. Then we'll decide to actually import this product other than buying it domestically. We will try to do it to buy it from outside and then import it. Right. So now they see what okay, people are no longer buying from us, they are buying from outside. Let us negotiate with the government for the government to do what? To increase our tariffs. Tariff is like a tax that you pay for imported goods. People that buy from Shein and them, they know what they pay our tariffs when they're actually purchasing these goods. And then you also have quotas. Quotas are like a limit, like to say, okay, a person can only import 3 quantities of this particular product, right? It's a limit. So they can also restrict e-entry through import restrictions. Or firms can create their own barriers. So now where they create their own barriers, they can use what you call predatory pricing. Predatory pricing, that is basically now where the existing firms, they lower their prices to discourage new entrances. How so? So now the existing firm, they see what, okay, there's this other firm which wants to enter the industry, right? And then this person enters the industry because now maybe they have the capital. Because remember, for you to enter into this firm, it requires what? High startup cost. So now you have your capital and then you enter. So now because you are still new, you are going to charge this product at a higher price because you are trying to make profits and also recover the cost that you spent when trying to enter into this industry, right? So now the existing firm, they can try to discourage you so you can exit the industry by doing what? By charging lower prices. So you are still new, you are charging maybe 10 rand for this particular product, and the existing firm they are charging five rand. Us as consumers, we would want to purchase from the cheaper supplier, right? We want to purchase from this other firm, an existing firm, because this one is charging the product at 5 rand. So you end up not making a profit, and then you are discouraged, and then you want to exit the market. So they can try to discourage the entry into the markets through a predatory pricing, where they charge lower prices when new firms enter the market. Also through excess capacity, where now you find they are producing at higher quantities so that they're able to satisfy the needs of the consumers. And then so now let's do this. Before we get into the graphs, here's what I want to show you guys. So I just want to firstly divide this. And then this side, I'm going to have monopoly. Then on this side, we're going to have the monopolistic competition. So remember that we said the demand curve for the monopoly and the monopolistic competition is what? Is downward sloping, right? It's downward sloping. So the demand curve for both of them is what? Is downward sloping. Sloping downward. So what do we do? Then sloping. And then okay, okay, there's an error here. It's supposed to be downward sloping. And then this one for the monopoly, the demand curve is downward sloping, and it is also what? It is also inelastic. And for the monopolistic competition, it is downward sloping and it is also elastic. Right, okay. So now that you know this, what else? Okay, now let me draw it to show you guys. So the demand for the monopoly is like this. So you firstly have your marginal revenue, which lies, you have your marginal revenue, which lies below your average revenue. So your marginal revenue is like this. It is closer to the y-axis. You can see it is closer to the y-axis. This is what? This is your marginal revenue. This is your MR. Right. This is R. Okay, this is your quantity. This is your price. And then you also have your average revenue, which is like this. Which is like this. This is average revenue. Okay, now let me just use the text bar. This is your average revenue, which is equal to your demand. So the demand of the monopoly is what? Is the average revenue curve, right? So this is why we say that demand curve is what? Is downward sloping or it is inelastic. And then for the, because you can see that, okay, no, let me write for the monopolistic competition now, the demand curve is what? It is downward sloping. So your marginal revenue is also like this, but then it is not closer to the y-axis, right? It is a bit far away from the y-axis. And then you have your y, this is your marginal revenue, your MR. And then you also have your average revenue. Average revenue is what? Is elastic, basically. It's trying to be horizontal, but it's not horizontal. Remember from chapter 7, I think, where we said with your elastic demand curve, it wants to be horizontal, but it's not horizontal, right? Perfectly elastic is the one which is horizontal, but elastic is like this. So you have your average revenue also here, which is also equal to what? To your demand, right? And then if the monopolist is making, okay, let me see. Okay, so why their demand curve downward sloping? Because of this. So I'm just gonna do an example here. So we need total revenue, we need average revenue, we need marginal revenue. Then 1, 2, 3. Then we need the price and the quantity. So here you have your quantity. Here you have your price. You have your total revenue, TR. You have your average revenue, AR. Then you have your marginal revenue, MR. So let's say 1, 2, 3. So for this firm, for these firms, issue, you know that this is 3. This is not 13. This is, okay, let me just try to, yeah. You know that they are price makers, right? So they can charge it any price. So let's just say this for the first units, maybe they charge, maybe let's say 10 Rand. Then for the second one, they charge 6 Rand. Then here they're charging 5 Rand because they are price makers. So they make their own price. Remember from the perfect market we had, the price was the same, which is why the total revenue, average revenue, and the marginal revenue was horizontal like that. So for this one, they charge their own prices. So the price, it can differ. So now your total revenue, you know that if you want to calculate your total revenue, you say that for total revenue is equal to your price times your quantity, right? So our price is 10 Rand, our quantity is 1. So 1 times 10, it gives you what? 10. 2 times 6, it is what? 12. You get 12, and then 3 times 5, you get 5, 10, you get 15. Okay, no, I'm just looking at something here and I'm realizing something. No, I'm realizing something. This should be, yeah, I wanna change these quantities. Because if I use them like this, it's not gonna give me what I want. So I'm just gonna say this one is 3. So when the price is 3 Rand, the quantity is what? Is 5. This one is 3. Okay, so let's just, so this is why the marginal revenue and the average revenue for the monopoly is downward sloping. This is why, because their price keeps on changing. Remember, for the perfect competition, we say that it is horizontal, right? Because the price was the same, it does not change. They take the price exactly from the industry. While here, they are price makers, right? They set their own price, so their price can change. Yeah. Oh, it's something I didn't show you guys. Okay, I'm just gonna do it now. Okay, so remember I said with TK the demand curve is downward sloping for both the markets, obviously. So this is the marginal revenue, which lies below the what? The average revenue. Because this marginal revenue is closer to the y-axis, then you can conclude to say, Guti, this would be what? This is the curve for the monopoly. Because for the monopoly, it is closer to the y-axis. I'm just gonna write M. And then for the monopolistic competition, the marginal revenue is it's a bit far away from the y-axis. Then this is your marginal revenue. And your marginal revenue wants to be elastic, which is why we say, sorry, this is supposed to be average revenue. Average revenue, which is equal to demand. Then here we have your marginal revenue. So I was saying that this one, the demand curve is it's elastic, right? It is elastic because remember from chapter 4, an elastic demand curve is like this. It wants to be horizontal, but then it's not horizontal as per se. And this one is inelastic because it wants to be straight. Remember, perfectly inelastic is straight. So inelastic is like that. So now okay, so we have a marginal cost here. And our marginal cost, I did say, with the marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue. And where where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, you have a profit maximization point. So to determine the quantity, we just go down from the profit maximization point, we just go down. So this is the quantity that this price is. So it is the outputs which they are selling, and then you go up to meet your average revenue. That is where you get your price. Then this is our price. So now to determine whether they're making a profit or a loss, we have to use what? We have to use your average revenue and your what? And your average cost. The other one which will tell you if if the firm is making a profit or a loss. So let's say your average cost is here. So no, let me say that they're making a normal profit. So if they're making a normal profit, the average cost will be here. So this would be your AC. It's what? It's touching that what's your curve for average revenue. You see average revenue equal to average cost. So here they're making a normal profit or break even. And the area of normal profits is this area from P to here to here to here. So if you also calculate the area of normal profits, and maybe like here you have 10 rand, and then obviously here it's 0. So you just say 0 minus 10, then 10. That is the area of the normal profit. And then you say 10 times the quantity, which is here, to calculate the area. And then you have, if they're making a loss, you'll say, okay, let me just use this one. So if they are making a loss, you would say that, also you're going to have your marginal revenue. So you have your marginal revenue like this ish. Because their curve is the same. That is why I'm using the curve for your monopolistic competition, because their curve is basically the same. So here you have your marginal cost, and then where your marginal cost meets with the marginal revenue, that is the profit maximization, right? Then you go down, right, to meet your quantity which is being sold, and then you go up to meet the average revenue, and then there you have your price. So we said here, I want them to make a loss. So the average cost will be here. This would be what your average cost. Can you guys even see this? Okay, so the other one I'll do it here because this one is untidy now. So you can see now that your price is here, and then your costs are there. So you go up to meet with your cost, they are here. This is your average cost, right? So where average cost is greater than average revenue, you are making a loss. And you say, come here, so these are your cost. And the area of loss is this one, from C to this point here, to this point here, and to what? To P, right? And then now, to calculate the area of the loss, you say this amount which is here times quantity, and then this price times quantity. Then you say the total of price times quantity minus the total of cost times quantity. Obviously, you get a negative number because here you're making a loss. And then to calculate your, okay, so this is a normal profit, this is a loss. So obviously here you have your average revenue. Then here you have your marginal revenue, MR. Then you have your marginal cost, MC. Where marginal cost meets with marginal revenue, you have what? You have your profit maximization point. Then from the profit maximization point, you go down to meet the quantities which are being sold. And then you go up to meet the revenue so that you can determine the price. Then your price is here. Then because now I want them to make a profit, so your average cost should be below. So your average cost will be here. Average cost. So you can see that your costs are below what the revenue, because the revenue is here and the cost is here. So these are the costs for C. So the area of economic eyeball, yeah, these are the costs. So Here they're making a profit because the costs are below what's the average revenue. So they're making a profit. So the area of economic profits, calculate this one here. You say price times quantity minus cost times quantity. Okay, this is what basically we will be doing here in this video actually. Okay. So yeah, here they're saying the same thing to say the downward demand curve is AR. So remember I said AR is the demand curve, and then MR is downward sloping, and then MR is positive when TR is increasing. When MR is positive, TR remains unchanged. Okay, you'll see here in this graph. We have your average revenue, have your total revenue, have your marginal revenue. I should have used these price. So when your average revenue, when your total revenue is 8 Rand, you can see that it's 8. Then they calculated the marginal revenue, which is 8 minus 0 divided by 1, you get 8. 14 minus 8 divided by 1, you get 4, and so on. So now you can see here that when your total revenue is at its maximum, your marginal revenue is 0, right? So at this point here, your total revenue is at its maximum. And then also, when your total revenue is 18, when it starts to decrease, your marginal revenue, it becomes what? Negative, which means that the additional income or revenue that you get from selling the additional units is actually what now? Decreasing, right? But now it's not, it's what? It's -2. That is what they were saying there. Yeah. Then marginal revenue is negative, total revenue falls, right? So when your marginal revenue is negative, your total revenue has fallen. These relationships apply to imperfect competitive firms as well. So this relationship, it applies to your monopolistic competition, your monopoly, and your oligopoly. It's only that this curve will not apply to an oligopoly because the demand curve for an oligopoly is kinked. But for the monopolistic competition and the monopoly, the demand curve is your AR. It's downward sloping, like how I showed you on the previous slide. Then the short run equilibrium, okay, I've already done this one. So it's basically the short run equilibrium of the monopolistic firm. So the monopoly, the firm under the monopoly is called the monopolistic firm. So you have your marginal revenue, which lies below your average revenue, and your average revenue is also called the demand, right? And then you have your marginal cost. Yeah. When your marginal cost intercepts with your marginal revenue, you have what? You have this, which is your profit maximization point. You go down, you meet your quantities, you go up to meet with the average revenue, and then you move to the side where you'd have your price. Then because your average cost is below your average revenue, you're making a profit. So this is the cost. So the area of profits is this one. So if you ask to calculate the area of profit, you say P times Q minus C times Q. Yeah. And then the long run equilibrium of the monopolistic firm. So the long run cost curve of the monopoly is essentially the same as the short run. So the long run will be the same as the short run. The only difference is that, so it will be the same as this, but the only difference is that instead of now having your marginal cost, you have what? Your it will be your long run marginal cost like this, right? But that everything is going to be the same. So if they're making a profit, or if they're making a loss, your AC will be here, and then you'd have your long run marginal cost like that. And then if they're making a normal profit, your AC will be here. Then your marginal cost should be the long run marginal cost. I think that's what they're saying here. But your MR is equal to long run marginal cost. The only difference is that the firm will produce where marginal revenue is equal to long run marginal cost. So it's the marginal revenue is equal to long run marginal cost. So where MC, this is your marginal revenue. Your marginal revenue intercepts with your marginal cost. You know, they're still talking about the same thing. Can you guys see? In the long run, your marginal cost would be the long run marginal cost. So they still be producing here, where your marginal revenue is equal to your long run marginal cost. Then where they intersect, obviously you get your price, you get your quantity, then you go up to meet your average revenue, then you get your price. Absence of supply curve under the monopoly. So the monopoly does not have a supply curve, right? They only have the demand curve, this one, your average revenue, which is your demand curve. So they do not have their supply curve. Then the price discrimination. So the price discrimination is basically the practice of selling different units of a good or service for different prices. So you're selling the same unit to people, but you're charging them different prices, right? That is called the price discrimination. And the purpose of price discrimination is to try and increase the sales. So the firm will engage in price discrimination with the aim of trying to what? To increase their sale. And then we also have two basic conditions that have to be met. A person has to be a price maker or a price taker. So in order to engage in price discrimination, you have to be a price maker or a price setter, right? So meaning that you have to be a firm under the monopolistic competition or the monopoly, right? Or an oligopoly, because oligopoly firms, they're also the price makers. They set their own price. And then consumers or markets must be independent. And then there are three main varieties of price discrimination. So the first one is first degree of price discrimination, which is sometimes called the discrimination among units. So this is where now this is where the consumers are charged at the maximum price that he or she is willing to pay for the product, right? So let me say, for example, maybe you want to sell, this is something that we usually do basically. So maybe if I want to sell next year, if I want to sell maybe my laptop to first years, and then I tell them that, okay, I bought my laptop for, let me just say 1,000 Rand. Say, okay, I bought it for 1,000 Rand. But initially, I want to sell this laptop at 500 Rand, right? But then, because I want to see which price that person will accept, I'll start by saying, good, okay, I'm going to sell it to you because I bought it for 1,000 Rand. I'm going to sell it to you for 800 Rand, right? And then maybe that students may say, good, okay, no, but you were using it last year. Can I at least buy it for 700 Rand? Then okay, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll sell it to you for 700 Rand. So that is what that is first degree price discrimination, whereby now the consumer is charged the maximum price he or she is willing to pay for. Right? It has to be the price that she is willing to pay for. Right? I hope you guys got that example because it's something that we normally do. Every time we want to sell something that we've used before, we will start by charging it at a price that at the higher price than the actual price that we want to sell it at, right? Just to see if that person is going to agree to that price. And then second degree price discrimination, which is also called the discrimination amongst quantities. So the discrimination among quantities, this is where now the consumers are charged different prices according to what they produce. Sorry, according to what they purchase, right? So if you So they are charged different prices according to what they purchase. So this one is whereby now if you are purchasing maybe like four units of a particular product, okay, let me just say five. Then the seller says, okay, I would sell you those 5 units for the price of 4, right? That is the price discrimination by that is the second degree of price discrimination, which is sometimes called the discrimination amongst quantities, because now they charge different prices according to what you purchase, right? So if you are purchasing 10 units of something, the seller may say, okay, I'm going to give you a discount. You can buy 10 for the price of 9, right? Yeah. I hope you guys are getting that. And then the third degree price discrimination, that is discrimination among buyers, where now the producer charges different prices to different customers, right? So this one, because this is a monopoly, I'm just going to use ESCOM. So how ESCOM uses a third degree of price discrimination, it is whereby they charge different prices to different customers. For example, you find that in rural areas, they pay, they pay less, they pay less amount for the same units of electricity, right? You find that they pay less compared to the people in urban areas, right? They are buying the same units, but the ones in the rural areas, maybe they are charged 10 rand, and the one in the urban areas, they are also purchasing the same units of electricity, but now maybe they are charged 20 rand, right? That is a third degree discrimination, which is discrimination among buyers. Hope you guys got that. Then we have what we call a natural monopoly. So a natural monopoly is basically a situation, okay, I think I explained this, but it's basically now where a firm is able to serve the whole market effectively, right? Yeah, I think I did. Where the firm is able to serve the whole market effectively. And we're saying that it occurs where your average cost is still declining when your quantity demanded reaches its maximum. So you can see here that your average cost is this one. It's declining here. It's declining until what? Until the demand reaches its maximum. So the demand is this one. Because remember, the monopoly, the demand curve is the average revenue. So the demand reaches its maximum here when the average cost is still declining. And we say this, we can relate this to economies of scale, because the economies of scale are saying that your average cost is decreasing when what? When your quantity, when your output quantity which is being produced is actually increasing. So you can see that your average costs are decreasing here, but the quantities are what? Okay, let me just do this. Your average cost is decreasing here, right? It's decreasing, but the quantities are what? It's increasing from here to here to here to here until here, where your what's this? Your average, your demand curve is where it's at its maximum, right? This is your marginal cost. Okay, so it's actually here because this is where you have your marginal cost touching your average cost. Can you guys see? So remember the economies of scale, we say this is where it's like this. Then you have your constant, and it's like this. You have something like this. So we're saying that here you have the economies of scale, and then here you have constant returns, and then here you have diseconomies of scale. Economies of scale is basically now where your average cost is decreasing and your production is increasing. Diseconomies of scale, your costs are increasing as well as your production. And then constant returns here, they increase by the same percentage. So a natural monopoly will arise where your marginal cost is actually declining while your output is increasing, right? And then here, this means we will see that the firm is able to produce more output with what? Decreasing cost. So the cost is low, but they're able to produce what? More output, right? And then this is where we have what? The natural monopoly situation that arises where it is most cost efficient for a single firm to produce all its outputs in an industry or market. And with this output that they produce, they are able now to do what? To serve the entire market effectively. So pricing options under the natural monopoly. So under the natural monopoly, if the monopoly is unregulated, meaning that if there's no government intervention, the equilibrium will be the price P1 and quantity P1. So the equilibrium will be the price P1 and the quantity P1. Because if the monopoly is not regulated, it would have this demand curve, right? So it will be selling, the price will be charged where P touches what's their average revenue or their demand curve if they are not regulated. So they will charge where it's P1 here. And then where marginal cost pricing will yield, Okay, marginal cost pricing will yield a price P3 and quantity 3, but the monopolist will make a loss. So now if they use the marginal cost pricing, meaning that because their demand is here, now where their demand touches with the marginal cost, so it's this one here. If they use the marginal cost pricing, they will sell at P3, Q3 units, right? And you can see that here when they're using the marginal cost pricing, the average cost is above their what? Their price, because their price is here. So they'll be making a what? A loss. And then also, but they're saying here output is efficient. So it is efficient because this is the highest output that they can get, right? You can see this is the highest output that they can get. And then we move on to say that average cost pricing will yield a price of P2 and a quantity of Q2. So if they use now the average cost pricing, because this is their average revenue and also their demand. So where their demand meets with the average cost, which is this one, orange graph, you can see this is where the price is at P2 and the quantity is at Q2. So here they're making a normal profit because their average revenue, this one, which is their demand curve, is equal to to their average cost. They're saying that here also the output will be inefficient because their maximum output will be here, right? So they are able to make the maximum output here where their demand curve touches their marginal cost. Let me see. Okay, now we go to the monopolistic competition. So from the monopoly, what you can take here is basically the characteristic that there's one seller, many buyers, the product is unique, the entry is completely blocked, such as ESCOM, because it requires a high startup cost, and collusion is impossible, obviously, because like it's a single firm, so can't collude. The information is complete, they are price makers, they make their own price, which is why their demand curve is downward sloping, right? And is relatively inelastic. Yeah. And then you guys, this price discrimination. And then the natural monopoly, it's basically a situation where now the firm is able to serve, one single firm is able to serve the entire market effectively, right? And that is because of the economies of scale, meaning that their costs are actually decreasing while they are doing what their output is increasing. Then we have a monopolistic competition. The types of monopolistic competition we have is your restaurants, and your monopolistic competitive markets are a large number of firms that produce similar and slightly differentiated products. So you can see that your restaurants, they are all selling the same products, but it is slightly different. So for instance, if you go to KFC, you would find what they're selling a chicken. It's just that now it is different because of the spices they used. And also when you go to Nando's, it's the same chicken, right? So in the monopolistic competition, the product is differentiated. And it also combines the features of a monopoly and a perfect competition. So product differentiation. So here in the monopoly markets, they try to differentiate their product, right? Because their product is the same. Remember, I said that if you go to KFC, you're still buying meat, you're still buying a chicken, right? If you go to what's this other shop, Chicken Licken, you're still buying a chicken, right? It's just that their product is differentiated, but by using the spices. So they're saying that homogeneous products, those are goods that are exactly alike. So if the goods are homogeneous, it means they are the same. And the firm which sells homogeneous products is the perfect competitor, right? For monopolistic competition, their product is what's heterogeneous, meaning that it is differentiated, right? It varies by their quality or their brand or the packaging, and so on. Product differentiation, this is the way in which the good is differentiated from a similar good. So product differentiation, you guys know this is basically now trying to make the same goods look different, right? It's how It's the ways in which a good is differentiated from a similar good. And then the price competition. So when firms, they compete using the price competition, it's where now it's a form of competition where similar products are differentiated by price, right? So they are similar products and then they're differentiated by what? By charging different prices. And non-price competition, it's a form of competition where any non-price characteristics of a product is used. So non-price competition is basically competing without using prices, such as they can use technical differences, branding, packaging, location, customer service. And the example can be advertising when now they advertise, or after sale services, developing their packaging, and so on. So this is the non-price competition. So by doing what? By advertising, they are actually trying to get more customers, right? So for a firm that is not advertising, it is difficult for that firm to get more customers, right? So that is how they differentiate their products. Also, they differentiate their products by branding. So you see here, we have different brand. So you know that if you see an Apple, which is like this, you know what this is already, it's an iPhone, right? If you see this H&M, you know this is a clothing brand, which is H&M, right? Or the sign here for Pepsi and so on, right? That is branding. Also, their packaging, they try to differentiate their products by packaging and yeah, and so on. That is what the non-price competition. And then the characteristics of the monopolistic competition is that there are many sellers or firms, right? And then the nature of the product is differentiated or heterogeneous. I've already said which their product is differentiated. And then the control over the price, there's full control. They are price makers, so they make their own price. Remember, under the imperfect competition, all the firms are price makers. It's only the imperfect competitor who is a price taker. And then the demand curve, it is relatively elastic. I showed you guys this at the beginning when I was showing you guys the monopoly. So the monopolistic, the price is elastic because it's not closer to the y-axis. It wants to be horizontal, but it's not. So it's like that. That is what their average revenue, which is the same as what their demand curve, right? Average revenue, which is equal to which is equal to demand. And then here it's marginal revenue. Then the availability of information, buyers and sellers have incomplete information. So this is the only firm where we have incomplete information. And this is also because like for the restaurant, for instance, the restaurant, you have all the information. No, you don't have, because you don't know the spices. For example, you don't know the spices that they use in their chicken in order to differentiate it, right? So we don't have full information here. And then where was I? Availability of information, barriers to entry and exits. There's free entry and exit. So you can enter the market, you can exit the market. Tomorrow I can decide to sell chicken, but now use a different spice, right? Then collusion is impossible. The long run economic profit. So in the long run, they can make zero economic profits, meaning that they can make a normal profit. Because of this free entry and exits, more firms can enter into the market, right? And then by now they'll only be able to cover their cost because they will make what's a normal profit or zero economic profit or break even. Then we have the silent features of the monopolistic competition. So the silent features is that their product is differentiated, right? It's not the same, but it's differentiated. Just think of the restaurant and just think of Wuti. They're all selling the same chicken, but now they're using different spices, right? Their demand curve, it is downward sloping. Or we say it is what's elastic. Then there are large number of firms in the industry. And then there are no barriers to entry in this market, right? Tomorrow you can wake up and decide to sell chicken, but now use different spices, right? Then the equilibrium of the firm under the monopolistic competition is the same with the one of the monopoly. The only difference is that the average revenue for the monopolistic competition, it wants to be straight, right? Okay, so this one is okay. But you can also look at your marginal revenue. For monopolistic competition, your marginal revenue is not closer to the y-axis, while for the monopolistic competition, your marginal revenue is closer to the y-axis. Let me just try to confirm that. Okay, it's not even close, this one as well. But yeah. But yeah, guys, so this one is actually the same graph that we're drawing on the previous slide. I don't know if you guys want me to draw it again, but you have your marginal revenue, which lies below your average revenue. Then you have your average revenue, which is equal to the demand curve of the firm, right? Also, the monopolistic competition does not have the supply curve, it only has the demand curve. And then you draw your marginal cost. Where your marginal cost meets with your marginal revenue, you have what's a profit maximization point. And from the profit maximization point, you draw your line, you go down to find the quantity, and you go up so that you can meet your average revenue, and then that is where you would get the price. So now here, because your average cost is below, you can see that your average cost is here and your average revenue is here. So your average revenue is above your average cost, so you're making a profit. And this is the area of profits, right? The loss is still the same as the one we were doing in the previous on the previous slide. But let me just do it. So this is your marginal revenue, this is your average revenue, and this is your marginal cost. And where your marginal cost intercepts with your marginal revenue, you get your profit maximization and your quantity. When you go up, you get your price. And then now, because you want to make a loss, your average cost will be here. So you can see now that this is your AC and this is your AR. So your AR is below your AC. So your costs are greater than the revenue. So you go up here. This is why this is your cost, and this is your profit, your price. So you're making a loss, and this is the area of economic loss. Same now, if they're making a normal profit, you just have this. This is your marginal revenue. This is your average revenue. Then this is your marginal cost. So where your marginal cost intercepts with your marginal revenue, this one, you have the profit maximization points, right? Then you go down to meet the quantity. Then you go up to meet the average revenue. Where you meet your average revenue, you'll have your price, right? And then because you want to make a normal profit, it means your average cost should be here. So this would be what? This would be your average cost here. Then they're making a what? A normal profit. So the area of normal profit is this area here, all of this. So this one will be your price, which is also your cost slash cost, right? So the graph for monopolistic and monopoly is the same, guys. Is the same basically. And then now let's continue. Okay. Okay, here they were doing what? Oh, the long run. Okay. For the long run, in the long run, obviously the monopolist will make what's a normal profit, right? So that is why you have your MC being equal to what your average revenue here to show what they are making what's a normal profit. Remember, because we said what there's free entry and exit. So in the long run, more businesses will venture into this market, right? Also now they are trying to do what? To also earn the profits that these firms are enjoying. But then you find out it's because now they've entered the market, the the competition becomes so high, then the firms now end up having to split the profit that they're earning, right? And then now they end up making what's a normal profit, right? So the only profit that they make is able to cover what's their cost. And then you have an oligopoly. So for the monopolistic, it's the same thing, guys. You just have to know the characteristics. And then the example I like to use is the restaurant example to say that there are many restaurants and they're selling differentiated products. And then they differentiate their product through what's using branding, using the packaging, by advertising and the packaging that they use. And then they have full control. They're also price makers. Because also this is an imperfect competitor. So obviously they have full control over their price. The demand curve is downward sloping and it's elastic. And then we have incomplete information. And because there's free entry and exit, it causes them to have a zero economic profit in the long run, right? And collusion is impossible. So yeah, and then also know how to draw this. I'm sure by now you know how to draw this because I've been drawing it. In the long run, they make a normal profit, which is here you can see your average cost is equal to your average revenue. Your average cost and the average revenue, they tell you if you are making a profit or a loss. Your marginal revenue and your marginal cost, they are just there to show you the profit maximization point in which the firm should actually sell at, because that is where they're going to maximize their profit, right? That is why when we have your marginal revenue intersecting with the marginal cost, I go down to find my quantity, which we're supposed to sell, and then up here to find the price, which we're supposed to sell these quantities at, right? And now, because even our average cost is here, where we have our average revenue, then it means we are having a normal profit, and this is what's also called the break even, right? Or zero economic profit. I always mispronounce this. Oh yeah, zero economic profit. And then now we look at the oligopoly, one of the imperfect market as well. An oligopoly, they're saying here a few large firms dominate the markets. So for an oligopoly, there are fewer but large firms, right? You can see here we have Nedbank, FNB, Standard Bank. These are all your commercial banks. There are few of them, but they are large, right? Because almost everyone in the country, I'm not going to say the word, but in the country, South Africa, probably is using one of these banks, right? So yeah, they dominate the markets. They are fewer, but they are dominating the market. Also with your cellular network industries, almost everyone also is using one of these. It's either you have Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, Cell C, or okay, I don't know this one, but yeah. So that those are what the oligopoly. There are fewer firms, but they are large and they dominate the entire market. And then a duopoly, it's when duo means two. So it means now there are two oligopolies. It's when there are two firms in that market, right? Duo means two, so it means there are two firms in that market. And then characteristics of an oligopoly, just think of your commercial banks or your cellular network. So you know that there are fewer cellular network. We have MTN, Vodacom. I think there are four, but we have how many buyers? We have many buyers, right? So the number of buyers and sellers, you have fewer large firms, but there are many buyers. The nature of the product, they are selling differentiated products. So also this product is differentiated, but it's the same. It's differentiated because you find with MTN also has data and Vodacom also has data, but then now for MTN maybe you can buy um a, if you want to buy a data for a week that can last you for the whole week. For Vodacom maybe you pay 5 rand, and for MTN maybe you pay six rand, right? And maybe for MTN if you're buying a data for a week, it also comes with what do you call this? A minute. Yeah, it also comes with the minutes that you can use, like to make phone calls, right? So that's how they differentiate their products. And then the control over price, there is full control over the price. So they are price makers. Remember, for imperfect competitors, they are all price makers. So oligopoly, monopoly, and a monopolistic competition. A firm operating under those is a what? Is a price maker. So they make their own price. The barriers to entry, there are restrictions such as licenses. So the barriers to entry is restricted by what? By AMA license. You guys know what licenses are by now. To start a business, you need to have a license. And then the availability of information is what is complete. So the only firm which has an information which is incomplete is your monopolistic competition. Right? Just think of your restaurants. We do not know the spices that they are using in their products. That is why the information is incomplete, right? And in the collusion, we say that collusion is possible. So for this firm, they can collude. The other firms, they cannot collude. The collusion is impossible. But for an oligopoly, they can collude, even though collusion is illegal. And the demand curve is kinked, right? So the demand curve for a perfect market, it is horizontal. And then for the monopoly and the monopolistic, it is downward sloping. For an oligopoly, it is kinked. There's a kinked demand curve. And in the long run, the oligopoly can make an economic profit or a normal profit. So this is the kink demand curve. It's like this. It's like this, guys. We actually look at this part. This part. And then it's like this. So this is the kink demand curve. So they should sell at this point. This is the kink demand point. At this point, you find the price which they should be using to sell this product, and here you find the quantities which they should be using to sell this product. If they are selling at a price which is higher than the kinked point, so if they're selling at this, okay, let me just use a different color. So if they decide to sell at this point here, by increasing their price, what is going to happen? Their quantity is going to decrease, right? So they're going to adjust downward, decreasing their price. So now it can come here to this point here. But also if they decide to sell here, here when now they are decreasing their price, you see, you find out their quantity is going to increase, but now their price is decreasing. So they also have to adjust up to this point, to this kinked demand point. So they are selling where they sell their products at this point, which is this one here, point A. So they're saying here, the initial price is P1 and the quantity is Q1. So the price is P1 and the quantity is Q1. DAD is the kinked demand curve. So the kinked demand curve is what? DAD. So this is the kinked demand curve, right? So if you ask to draw the kinked demand curve, you just have to show this. That's what I drew here. Okay, mine is not clear, but it's like, it starts like this and then it's like this. So you have to show this point. And then a price increase, DA, and a price decrease, AD. So here from DA, from this point here, you'll be increasing your price. And from this point here, you'll be decreasing your price. Remember what I showed you guys here. So if you're charging at any point above the kink demand point, you have to increase your price. And then if you're increasing your price, your quantity is obviously going to decrease, right? And if you charge at any point below your kinked point, which is here, you are decreasing your price. And what is going to happen to the quantity is going to increase, but the price is decreasing. So it doesn't have value because you are going to make, you're not going to make the profit as the one that you would make if you are selling at a kinked point, right? Which is point A. And then they continue to say the corresponding marginal revenue is broken up into, so the marginal revenue, this one, remember from when we're doing the monopolistic competition, your marginal revenue was this one, right? And then your average revenue was this one. So here your average revenue has changed. It's no longer straight. It's like this. It's kinked, representing the kinked demand curve. It's like this, and then it goes down. And then now your marginal revenue, it has been broken down. So I'm just going to, so it's marginal revenue, it's like this. And then they also meet this one. So your marginal revenue is like this. And then where you have your quantity, your marginal revenue will go down here and then it will continue there. So this will be your marginal revenue. And then, but you guys can see it here. Then you have your marginal cost. So where your marginal cost meets your marginal revenue, so we assume that they're meeting your marginal revenue here. You go down, you find your quantities, then you go up, you find your price, where the price meets the kinked point. Then you have this, right? So your marginal revenue is here. Then they're saying that corresponding of, okay, how do you move this thing? Okay. Corresponding of DA and ADR respectively. Okay, they were still referring to marginal revenue and this MR. So you have marginal revenue, this one, and this marginal revenue. It is broken down. Then marginal cost curve, such as okay, your marginal cost curve, such as MC. So this is your marginal cost curve. Then as a result of the profit maximizing level of price and quantity remain at P1 and Q1 respectively. So they're saying that because of profit maximizing level of price and quantity, so this is your MC and this is your MR. Remember when MC meets with MR, we have your profit maximization level. Then you go down, you find your Q1, you go up, you find your P1. So they will sell at this price because this is where they maximize their profit, right? As much as they are not touching your MR, because we said from the other firms that we're looking at, we're saying that this is your marginal revenue, right? Then this is your marginal cost. So the profit maximization will be here, where they're touching, and then we go down. Because here they're not touching does not mean with him. I don't know how to explain this, but yeah, guys, we assume that this is the marginal cost, and here it's their kinked demand point. At this point, it is where they will maximize their profit. So the firm should sell at their kinked demand point, right? They should sell here at their kinked demand point. Hope you guys are getting that. Because I was trying to find ways to explain this thing, but okay, okay, so let's continue. Then advertising and product diversification as a barrier to entry. So one of the barriers to entry in an oligopoly is because of their advertising and diversification. So advertising, it's basically one of the non-price competition in which a firm promotes their brand and products using media, right? And then the barriers to entry, it's an element that detects and prevents new. Okay, they're basically explaining these terms here. It's advertising, it's when the firm is trying to advertise their products. And then barriers to entry, those are the things that prevent new entrances into the markets. And then product differentiation is basically when now they're trying to differentiate their products, right? We said they can differentiate their product through branding and so on. Yeah, guys, we have come to the end of the video. I hope you guys find this information helpful. I wasn't also able to find the past papers, guys, for this test. So this is why you didn't see me guys posting anything about like the past papers for test 3. But if you guys happen to have them, you can just send them on the WhatsApp group, you know. But I think this information is enough. Just understand the graphs, just understand your marginal revenue, your marginal cost, your average revenue, your for the markets, it's quite easy. You just have to understand your average revenue. Okay, now let me just do a quick recap here. For the markets, you just have to understand your average revenue. That to calculate your average revenue, you say total revenue divided by quantity. And also that you have marginal revenue. To calculate your marginal revenue, you say your, you say a change in total revenue divided by a change in quantity, right? And then to calculate what else? Your total revenue, you say price times, right, times your quantity, and then, yeah. And then you also have to know that where your average revenue is equal to the average cost, it means you're making a what? That is a break even. Just gonna write break even point, BEP. And then where your average revenue and your average cost is the one which will tell you whether you're making a profit or you're making a loss, right? And so if your average revenue is less, okay, is greater than your average cost, it means you're making what? Okay, average revenue is greater than the cost, so you're making a profit in this case. So it's an economy of profit. And also where your average revenue is less than your average cost, it means you're making a what? You're making a loss, right? And then where your marginal revenue equals to your marginal cost, that is what? That is your profit. Just gonna write profit max. This is your profit maximization point. Then for perfect markets, they are price takers, right? So you have this, have this. And then this is for the industry. This is for the industry, and then this is for the individual firm, right? Individual producer. I don't like to write in capital letters, but it's fine there. This is for the individual firm, right? So your perfect, this is for the perfect. I'm just gonna write perfect here. No, I'm just gonna write perfect competitor, PC. Guys, I'm lazy to write. So for industries, you have this would be your demand, this would be your supply, where the forces of demand and supply, they meet. In the industry, you have your price here, then you have what? You have your quantity, right? Then the individual firm who wants to sell under the perfect competition, right? So we have industries such as your agricultural sector here, right? The person will have to take this price as it is and use it in its okay, this is supposed to be horizontal. And then we'll take this price as it is, right? And then we said, Uti, here, this price is the same as P equals to demand equals to average revenue equals to your marginal revenue. Why? Because, sure. Because of the table we drew on the previous video, if you watched it for perfect markets, we did a table, and then we found that your average revenue was equal to your marginal revenue was equal to your price, right? And this is also your demand curve. This one is horizontal or what? Elastic, right? And then in the long run, because we said here, one of the characteristic is that there's easy entry and exit. Tomorrow you can wake up and decide to start selling apples, right? Anything under the agricultural sector. So the supply curve, this one, okay, I forgot to like say this is the supply, this is the demand. The supply curve would increase, right? More people would want to enter into the market because they see that you're making a profit, right? This is supposed to be an arrow indicating a decrease. Yeah. So when more people they enter into the market from the industry, you can see the quantity is going to do what? It's going to increase, obviously, but like it's going to increase because more firms have entered the market, so there's more supply, but the price is going to decrease, right? And then an individual firm would have to take this price exactly as it is also. And then, okay, so here, let me just say maybe they're making a normal profit, right? They're making a normal profit, so you have your MC, right? Where your MC meets with your MR, you have your profit maximization point, right? And then you go down to find your quantity. So this is the quantity that they are selling at in the short run, right? And then now, because it's in the long run, okay, no, let's put also your marginal, your AC here to show what, okay, this they were doing, you know, in the short run, they are making a profit. Or they're making a normal profit, or they're making a loss, but most likely they make a profit. So your AC is here. Okay, this is your average cost. In the short run, you can see that your costs are below your price. And then now in the long run, more firms enter the market, and then the individual person has to take this price exactly as it is, right? And now, because like in this firm, the quantity which is supplied is going to decrease because people can purchase from any other firm because there are many firms. So your marginal cost is here. When your marginal cost meets with your average revenue, with your marginal revenue, your prices will be here, your quantity will be here. So you can see that for the individual firm, the quantity decreases, right? Yeah, and then for your monopolistic competition and your monopoly, the demand curve is downward sloping. It's like this. Then you have your average revenue. You have your marginal revenue here. Then you have your average revenue here. Your average revenue, which is also equal to what's your demand, right? Then you have your MC. So where MC meets MR, this is your profit max. You go down to find the quantity, go up to measure your average revenue, and then you get the price, right? And then if your AC is here, it's a normal profit because AC is equal to AR. If it's below AR, it's a loss. And if it's okay, so here it's a normal because they are equal. And if it's below, it's a profit. But then if AC is here, then it's a loss. It's the same thing for the monopolist, and it's also the same thing for the firm in the monopolistic competition, right? The only difference is now that in the long run, your MC, this one, would be your what? Your long run marginal cost. And then you also said we also have under the monopoly, we also have natural monopoly, where we said in natural monopoly, it occurs where your average costs are decreasing, right? Where you're experiencing economies of scale. So you have your marginal cost here, and then we had your average cost like this. So here, when your average cost is decreasing, you can see that your average cost is decreasing, but your quantities that you're producing is what is increasing. So now that is where we would have the natural monopoly will occur, because that means we see the firm now is able to serve the whole market efficiently because they are producing a higher output and their cost awards are decreasing. Then you said here we're experiencing what the economies of scale. Then also said yeah. And then we have the kinked demand curve of an oligopoly, which is like this, and then it's like this. Then the oligopolist must sell at this point to make the maximum output, or to make the maximum profit. They must sell at this point. If they decide to sell here, they would make a loss because you can see what the quantities were going to decrease, right? They'll come this side, and then their price will increase, but the quantity will decrease. Also, if they want to sell here, they will also make a loss because as much as the quantities will increase, but the price will do what? Will decrease, right? And then we have our marginal revenue. Marginal revenue is touching your kinked point here. And then when it gets to this line here, which is going to your quantity, and then it's get here, then it starts to break, and then it comes here, your marginal revenue, right? Then your marginal cost should cross here. Then you have your marginal cost. That is basically everything you have to know in regards to the graphs. And then how to calculate these things, you already know. And then the characteristics. I think the characteristics are also important. And then, yeah, guys, I'm confident that you guys are going to do well, that we are going to do well actually in this test. I'm very confident. Good luck, guys, on your preparation for the test. I wish you guys all the best.